All right, I'm here with Michelle Kreft, and Michelle is the program supervisor over at Henry Ford SandCastles Grief Support program for children and families. And we are chatting again, conversations about mental health, just bringing awareness to different programs and different, ways that just really my main goal with doing these conversations is to bring awareness to, different ways of support out there for mental health. So Michelle, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's dive right in. I mean, Henry Ford SandCastles, it's in 7 different locations in Metro Detroit. And tell me about what your organization does and the services it provides and who it serves.
Yeah. So what we do is we're a nonprofit. We are a division of the Henry Ford Hospice. We are connected to Henry Ford Hospice, but we actually serve the community at large. So what we do is we provide grief support services for children ages 3 to 18 and their parents and guardians and their family free of charge. So our program started in every city that we had a hospice office at originally. And what we do is anybody in the community can call us. We do grief support, and then we also have a bereavement camp that we do in the summertime. So the thing that we are most blessed that we can say about our program, I could go on, but the most important is that we're free. Wow. That, especially after someone has lost a spouse, maybe that person was their main person that was bringing in the income, and maybe they're worried about how they're going to get support for their family or worry about insurance and things like that. And the beauty with our program is they just call and we're able to tell that parent or guardian, we do an intake for them and they don't have to worry about any of that.
Now, being that you're connected with Henry Ford, I know we chatted about this.
Yeah.
Is it fully funded by Henry Ford or not?
No, and thank you for bringing that up, Tara, because I think that's the biggest misconception that the community has, because we are connected to Henry Ford Hospice and the health system. A lot of people think that we are 100% funded through Henry Ford, and we are not. We are, I think, almost the only one of 2 programs within the health system that are completely 100% supported through philanthropic efforts. So we are very much reliant on people in the community, agencies, foundations to provide that funding for us.
Okay. Now, who started SandCastles? How did this even come about?
That's a fun story if you believe in faith and miracles. So back in 1996, our founding, so with hospice, Sandra Seeley was our executive vice president for our program. And she was on the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, visiting her sister. And her sister was also a nurse, or I think she was a social worker, and said, you have to visit this program called the Dougie Center. And so Sandra and her sister visited, and the Dougie Center is a program that's very similar to ours in Portland, Oregon. And she just loved the idea of how the kids were supporting each other and helping each other. And she said, this would be an awesome program to bring back to Detroit, Michigan for all of our hospice offices. So Sandra Seeley came back and she was dreaming of how to put this together. And that's where the funny part comes in is Peggy Nielsen, our manager who I co-managed the program with, her husband happened to be in the office one day listening to Sandra go, gosh, I wish. And Peggy's husband, they weren't married at the time. She was actually in Fort Wayne, Indiana at Aaron's house running a grief program there. And she was on her way back to get married. And he said, here's her resume. And so when Peggy came back, the 2 of them got together and Peggy put all the work together on the policies and the foundation of everything for the program. And it was in 1997, they did the first training and we opened up our first site in Southfield.
Wow.
And yes, we've been growing ever since. But it doesn't get any better than that, where fate kind of put everybody together and a grief support program was born.
Yes. Well, how many different people are part of the program there?
Meaning staff or families?
Families. How many families are you guys helping out there?
If I remember, I just looked at the stats from our website the other day, and I think we were at 1,300 people last year. So children, teens, and adults.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a lot of people in the Metro Detroit area.
Now, Michelle, let's chat a little bit more about your role and involvement with SandCastles. So how long have you been involved, and what exactly are you doing with SandCastles?
So I've been with SandCastles for 23 years now. And that's a neat story. So I started as a volunteer, and when I graduated, there was a position for a program coordinator, so like a volunteer coordinator. So they brought me in that way right after I graduated from grad school. And soon after that, when we were starting to grow, I moved into a clinical background because that's my degree is in that and social work. And within 5 years, the opportunity to move up to management came up, and I've been there. I think it was 2005, and so I've been the program supervisor. I laugh all the time because I think I'm the only one on the team who's literally had every job in our office.
Hey, that's awesome! You can work your way up.
There you go.
And Michelle, what's the most fulfilling or most rewarding part about working with SandCastles?
I would say, Tara, and this is the part that touches my heart, why you do what you do. It's when you can hear that voice of that mom or that parent or that child that comes to program, and they are so worried and overwhelmed with grief, and they are just so shocked, like not even knowing what to do, how to help their children, what their future is going to be like, that they can barely get through that phone call without crying with me. When you can be with that person and you see the joy, because I think a lot of times people think, oh, how do you do what you do? I bet it's sad all the time. And what people don't understand is what we do is we connect people back to their joy and back to that passion of living, that you can still remember your loved one and your heart's going to be sad and miss them, but there is still this wonderful life to live and remember them. And so that's why I do what I do. It's, I think, why all of our team members do it, because you see that person, when they come up and they're nervous and they're afraid, and then by the end of the night, they're like, gosh, does this program meet every week? And can we come back? And you see the joy sparkle back in their eyes. That's why we do it.
I can tell you're very passionate about what you do and really care about the families that you work with. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of grief, right now with everything going on, there's a lot of change going on with the fact that kids alone right now, the grief of losing their friends, losing school, losing sports. Do you guys have anything that are helping kids right now? What are your thoughts on that? And are you guys doing anything to help kids right now that are grieving through what's going on right now?
Yeah. So right now our staff is meeting, and right now we specifically just work with the loss or the death of their loved one. But we are starting to broaden it, because even in the work we do, when a family comes in, we already naturally see the loss of many things. Again, you might have the loss of an income, so the families aren't able to do what they used to do, or they have to move and sell their home and go to a new neighborhood, so they're grieving their family or their community, their neighborhood, their schools, their friends. So what happens naturally is that when we support the kids in the death of their loved one, we help them identify their feelings and coping skills. And so what happens naturally, because grief is universal, and they will be the coping skills that they will identify and start to use can help with many things of loss. But what we're starting to do is, because the thing that we also find important is education. So wanting to educate people more on COVID and what's going on and the loss of different things. And also, as you're doing with mental health. So if kids or families are feeling anxious or feeling that heavy sadness or feeling like they're slipping into that depression, helping them with that, reaching out, developing coping skills, talking to people about their anxiety and things like that, because what people don't realize is one of the things that we help the families with when a loved one dies is there's so much chaos and turbulence that happens in a child's routine. That routine is what helps one of the coping skills. So a lot of times people are amazed, like, gosh, my kid wants to go back to school, or they want to go back to their sports. Wow. And a lot of times the reason why is because school starts at the same time. They have the same teachers every day. Lunch is at the same time. There are things that are in their day that are very routine and predictable, where when someone dies, it's not, or the situation we're in now, it's very unpredictable. Like in the beginning, everything was changing. School's just shutting down for 2 weeks, and then it was then for a month, and now it's till the end of the year, or till summer. And so things that we can help, not only in grief, but even in the grief of missing their friends, and that is reminding them that we're here to talk, helping to normalize what's going on, that they're not alone. Following your children's lead, because everybody will grieve differently, whether it's the death of their loved one or the loss of their school or friendships with their schoolmates. So one of the things that I like to do with parents when I do a phone intake is, because sometimes parents will say, well, I check in with my child and they're not always, they don't know what's going on, or they're fine, they're okay, don't worry about me, mom. And sometimes what I share is kids, even the older ones, don't always know how to articulate that, that this feeling, or if they're bickering with their siblings or snapping at mom, that this is related to their grief or their loss. And so what I recommend sometimes is just get like a notebook, a blank notebook that the parent and the child both know that this is going to be a means of communication. The child can put it or somewhere in their room or the house. They write down what they're worried about, or what they're thinking about, or even what they're angry about, then knowing that their guardian or their adult will read it later and answer them. And so it's a way to communicate, because sometimes kids are embarrassed or ashamed about the way they feel. They're trying to put up this front because there's this chaos, and I want to help mom or dad. And so sometimes they're not always going to mom and dad to share these feelings. So that having that notebook is definitely a tool that, not only with the death of their loved one, but even what's going on now, there might be worries that they're having that they're afraid to talk about.
And, even not just kids, adults. I mean, I was just thinking, I know a few people who have passed and have had funerals, and they're not even able to go to the grave site. Like, I feel like, there's it's just so different. And how do they grieve the loss if, they have in their, sometimes you have in your mind how it's going to go, right? And now it's, hey, you got to keep your car over here. You can only have 10 people in the room. Now it's only immediate family. You can't go see someone, to pay your respects. So, I guess what I'm getting at is, I think what you guys do is so needed right now. And if it's not for the people watching, for yourself, maybe there's someone else, that you can recommend to SandCastles. And because you are fully, you're funded by donations, like, man, if anyone's got, any little bit will help, and it's going to help someone during this time.
For sure. And that is huge. Our staff have been talking about that, because part of that mourning and coming together is a part that helps you with your grief. And especially for younger ones, because they're so concrete in their thinking, sometimes seeing that person and putting together, like, okay, they might not understand all the pieces, but they see their person, and someone can explain to them that they have died and this is why, and explaining, why a person dies. And so much of that is missing. There are so many times when you go to a funeral, even connecting to family and friends you haven't seen in years, or, having that person come and say, like, what, if you need me, call me, or, I'll be reaching out to you. It's on so many levels, things are being disconnected. But it's another thing that, like you said, we can definitely help and support with at SandCastles as part of our dialogue and our groups. We have the children's groups that we're running online virtually. And also this week we started the adult groups, so the parent guardian meetings as well, just to connect and have someone to say, like, I feel like I'm in a fog, or this is unreal, and have somebody next to you normalize and say, I understand, and what you're going through, unfortunately, even though it doesn't feel like it, it's normal for the circumstance, that validation.
Now, Michelle, what types of events do you guys host during the year typically to meet your fundraising goals or other goals?
Well, usually we do different fundraisers throughout the year. And the irony is this spring we had 2 of them slotted to start. One of them was a cruise in for a cause that we do at the Troy Motor Mall, where people are invited to come. They can test drive a Lamborghini, have a glass of wine, different things like that. Sorry. And that got canceled. And so unfortunately for us, 2 of our big events got canceled. And that's hitting us really hard, because we're really now trying to scramble of what we can do now virtually to raise funds. So that's why when you reached out to us to do a live interview and to talk about not only mental health, that we can help the community, but also we're in great need of funds too, and that support, we're greatly appreciative, because you know, you have to be very creative in situations like this when you're at stay-at-home orders, and how do you have a fundraiser?
Right. Now,
Yeah.
do you work with volunteers at all, or are they all staff that are part of
No, so we only have 8 staff on our team right now. And so as you can imagine, you can't support over 1,300 people with just 8 people. And so we are also very connected to our group of volunteers. So we do orientations, and then we do volunteer training. So if somebody in the community was interested, currently at this time, we are still in need of our volunteers. So if anybody is interested, what we've been doing on our website is posting our orientations. What we would really love to do is to do a volunteer training online, or try to come up with something like that. If we're able to, and then it would allow people to then become part of our program. And so usually when our programs meet at the sites, we will break the age groups up. Every site's a little bit different depending on numbers, but it'll be roughly like a 3 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12 and teen group. And so we need a number of volunteers then to facilitate with us at each of those groups. So usually there's 3 to 4 volunteers per age group that help us. So they get the education, like the didactic pieces, understanding children in grief. We teach them the facilitation skills they'll need for the groups, how to handle difficult situations or maybe questions that come up. So that way they have everything they need to facilitate a group. Like they don't need, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a psychologist. And really, all they need is to have a love for children and a willingness to be there for them.
Oh. Well, Michelle, what's the best way for people to get in touch with SandCastles to, either to volunteer or to donate, or just to get some information for themselves or someone they know?
Yep. So anything that you would need to learn about SandCastles, so whether to join as a family or to volunteer or donate, is all on our website, and it's www.aboutsandcastles.org. And there you'll have all of our information. It's got our phone number. Families that are in need can call 313-771-7005. We are all working remotely, but each one of us takes turns to monitor the phones and the messages that we get so that we return everybody's calls. There is also an option on our website that they can email us at our SandCastles box, and we also monitor that as well and then get back to people. So, we've had teachers call us. We've been doing phone intakes with families that have lost loved ones to COVID. We're able to, sometimes people just want to know what to say to their kids or a lot of times I'm working with parents and guardians of like things that they can do at home to help support their kids, like when they can't sleep and they're struggling or having a hard time. So sometimes we walk them through things like that too.
Well, and I would put all your information in the comments below.
Okay.
And also for the people that are part of Real Producers, the Real Producers community, I do want to show you this. Can you see it?
I can.
Yeah. So in our June issue of Real Producers of Oakland and Wayne County, there is a charity spotlight on Henry Ford SandCastles Grief Support Program.
It's gorgeous.
So you can read more about SandCastles in our June issue. But until then, I will put all the information, and there's also a link to donate. And Michelle, do you have any final words before we wrap up?
The only thing I would say is just reaching out. First, I want to thank you again for having me. I think what you're doing for your community is wonderful, because my heart is going out to all kind of people right now, whether you're on the front lines or you're being brave and staying home for everybody. Everybody is stressed and overwhelmed, and you can see it in whether it's your family or your neighborhood, and some days are good and bad. And my heart is just going out is when this kind of ebb and flows or gets to a new place, is the aftermath of mental health damage it's going to do for people, like the anxiety and depression that people are going to be left with. And so I'm, like I said, so grateful because so many people are being affected by, like I said, having loved ones die of COVID. They're stressed and overwhelmed. Every person in our community is affected by it, whether you can see it. Sometimes, when you break your arm, people can see it and they, oh, how are you? Like, is there anything I can do? But with mental illness, when you're having anxiety or depression or experiencing grief, you don't always see it, especially when people are putting on that front, like, oh, I'm fine. Yeah. So just having opportunities where people can read it on their own and have that place where, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, they can reach out and ask those questions, or, because we have so many other resources to different links too that we can help share. And I think that's going to be most important, whether you need grief or a therapist or any kind of support. You are kind of honing in on a collective of things that people can use as tools.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, for those out there, don't be afraid. Everyone's got this front, sometimes people don't want others to know how they're really feeling. Yeah. Don't be afraid to let people know how you're really feeling. Reach out to me, reach out to Michelle, reach out to SandCastles. There's different hotlines out there. It doesn't hurt to talk to someone about how you're feeling. I mean, just, be vulnerable.
And the one thing I also like to teach people, and a lot of people know already, but grief will manifest itself because grief is so physical. If you're not finding different ways, whether you're maybe you're an energetic person and wanted, you need to work out and let it out, or if you're more of a quiet, mindful person and do breathing meditation or yoga, find a way to express it. Find somebody to talk to, whether it's, family member or calling a friend, because what happens is then it manifests and then you're getting sick and you're getting headaches and your stomach is hurting, and then you're, gosh, like, why don't I feel like this? Like, I don't feel like myself anymore. And it's because all of this is starting to weigh down on you.
Right. Well, thank you, Michelle, for joining me this afternoon. And again, reach out to SandCastles if you have any questions, want to volunteer, get more information. And you have a great weekend, Michelle.
Thank you too, Tara.
All right.
Bye.